Hey everybody, I'm here today to show you my latest miniature creation. This is a place that we frequent in Barbados. It's a little bar called Wendy's Sports Bar. It's not like our Wendy's. It's very centered on football, soccer as we call it. And we're up there at least once a day, and I've wanted to do this for a little while. So it's leaving the country in a few weeks, so I wanted to give you a little rundown on how I made it and how I made all the little things inside of it, and talk about scale a little bit, because this one is slightly different in that most of the time I'm very particular about scale. I usually work in 112 or 124, which if you've seen any of my other videos, 112 means one foot in real life is 1 inch in miniature life. 124 means 1 foot in real life is a half an inch in miniature life. This one is not anything. It is, sometimes you just have to take creative license, and in this case I did. And the reason being, number one, it has to travel. So I couldn't make it 3 feet long, or I wouldn't get there. I couldn't make it this long and this high, which would have probably been more accurate, but aesthetically it would not have looked good. And the things would have been too small. So I just had to say, you know what, I want it to look like the bar, but it's not going to be, everything's not going to be to scale. The other reason why I chose to do that was because bottles and glassware and dishware, which is pretty much all that's in a bar, is harder to make than household things like books or plants or whatever. Glassware is tricky, so I did order some glassware, but then getting it to the right scale is also tricky. So everything isn't as accurate as some of my other things, but the essence of it is just like the bar that we go to in our favorite place. So we'll start with this plexiglass front, which is just magnetized on with some really tiny magnets. There's lots and lots of different materials you can use when you're doing windows, glass tabletops, whatever. You could use packaging from baked goods. Anything you buy at the grocery store comes in that kind of packaging. But then it does have ridges and bumps. You have to cut around that. And it's not good quality, so I think over time it yellows. All this is a poster frame. They're not expensive. Because all there really is a big piece of plastic. They're usually 20 by 30 inches, and it's got a really skinny plastic frame, so you just get rid of that or keep it for something else. And it cuts very easily, so you can cut it with just a regular X-Acto knife, and it's really flat, plus it comes with a protective film, so it's not scratched up like you might get if you were using something from the grocery store. So that's what I use for all my glassware. So let's take this off and have a look inside. I'm going to start with talking about the outside first. I use, when I'm making a lot of my projects, I use a material called foam board. So it looks like this. You can get it just about anywhere. It comes in a sheet the size of Bristol board, so again, like 20 by 30 inches. Comes in white and black. And I wouldn't use it for projects much bigger than this. It can warp, but if treated properly, you can eliminate that. One way to eliminate that is, first of all, I make a blueprint out of paper pattern, figure out the size, make it out of this foam board. Then, if I'm wallpapering or doing any kind of surface treatment on one side, you need to treat the other side the same way. So let's say you were putting paper and glue on one side of the foam board, you're going to do the same on the other side, even if it's just black paper. Glue it, weight it under books, soup cans, it doesn't matter what. Let it dry thoroughly, and then it shouldn't warp, especially if it's this size. Or you can reinforce it with pieces of wood. Like there's a piece of wood right here. I don't mean a huge piece of wood, but just a strip of wood just to give it a little bit of stability. You can completely cover the sides of it with wood. I have a wood panel here, just to reinforce it, just to give a little strength. And I also, Jeannie, if we can get this, I also use Bristol board, and I make like a 1 inch strip of Bristol board, score it down the middle, and then white glue it, and I use painter's tape to hold that on there like a clamp, and that secures everything. And to actually glue the pieces together, I do use a hot glue gun, but in the end it's the white glue, the wood, the paper, corners. White glue gives it strength, hot glue is a temporary hold. So glue guns, a lot of people doing miniatures will say, don't do glue guns, don't use glue guns ever. They have their place, but again, they're usually more of a temporary hold. And then you're using your white glue to secure it. And the white glue that I like the best, get rid of this tape, doesn't matter. It's called Aleene's Tacky Glue. This I think is a quick dry. So it doesn't dry like super glue. It's not instant, but it's way, way faster than traditional white glue. So it dries pretty quickly. So that gives you your strength. And this is a really, really good glue. I highly recommend this. I go through gallons of it. And super glue, doesn't matter. Any kind of super glue, I use that for a lot of stuff too. Doesn't have to be that brand. Any brand, I could have taken it out of the package. Back to the foam board. Foam board is weird stuff. A lot of people will complain about not being able to cut it and not getting a clean cut. All you need to do to get a clean cut, this is a clean cut. This is not a clean cut. It can even look worse than that. It can be completely pebbled and ripped. All it is a sharp knife. And I don't just mean, oh, I've got this X-Acto knife, it's probably pretty sharp. You need a brand new blade to cut through this stuff. I don't even know how old this is. Let's see if it works. No. So if you get a cut like that, I'm gonna either get rid of this blade. It's a long blade, so I wouldn't get rid of it. I'd break it off with the pliers, pull it out, make another cut, and you will get a cut just like that. So biggest thing you can learn when you're using foam board is to use a really sharp knife. And in a project like this, I've probably used 6 different blades just to get through that project, because it just dulls it. You can see on, I don't know if you can on this one, probably not, but if you look after a few cuts, you can see where the foam has dulled the surface of the metal. So, sharp knife. Okay, I think that's about it for the exterior surface. You can see here where I have used a wooden corner molding. I'm going to tip it slightly, Janine, just so you can see this. Can you see that corner? So that's a molding, and you can get that at local lumber yards. You'd be amazed at how many local lumber yards have small pieces of wood like that. And that just gives it strength on the front. It's also helpful if you're going to be putting in any kind of magnets, because then it gives you a background. And it just makes everything solid. So that's the basic outside structure. So I talked about assembly and how I assembled the structure, but I did forget a pretty important part. And that is that I do all the surface technique, the surface coloring, before I put it together. So whatever I want the ceiling, I don't even know what that ceiling is. Whatever I want the ceiling to be, or the walls to be, or the floor to be, that is done before assembly, so that you're not fiddling around in there trying to get a piece of paper flat. So in this particular case, on the ceiling, I don't know if you can see it, we'll try. The ceiling's pretty much covered, but you still have to put something up there. And I have a type of watercolor paper that I use that is a textured white. I don't even know if you can see it. But I think the main thing is that you want to cover it with something. I don't want the foam board showing. So this textured white watercolor paper just has a bit of a texture to it. It just looks nice on a ceiling. The walls in this case, it was a lot of plywood. So I actually used wood and I stained it. Very, very thin, very, very thin wood, not balsa wood. That's too soft, but some kind of hard wood. Actually, my son planes me down a lot of wood, which is really nice because it's a little bit harder to get thin wood, but any craft wood, any craft store has craft wood that you can use. For the flooring, because they had a ceramic tile floor, I just Googled till I found one that I liked, scaled it down. Most floor tiles are 12 inches by 12 inches. And I probably would have had that in my measurements in the reference pictures that I took. So I found the style that I remembered it being, or that it looked like. I think in this case, no, I didn't do too much. Sometimes I will put it down on a mat, maybe a mat that's a bit softer than this, or maybe a pad of paper, and score down those lines with something like the end of a pen, or not the ink part of a pen, but the end of a paintbrush works well. and score down the lines. And then when you do the aging that we'll talk about in a bit, it kind of gives you that look of real grout. So all the surface textures are done prior to assembly, okay? So that's one thing to remember. Now, from there, you're basically doing, in a house situation, you'd be doing furniture, accessories. This is a bar, so it has counters, bar stools, bottles, coffee cups. He's a big soccer fan. His name is John, by the way. He's a big soccer football fan. Sorry, John. So these cups come from all over the world. All of his patrons bring him football cups, and they're proudly hung. Now they are made from, this might surprise some of you, but they are made from hot glue sticks. So I take a hot glue stick and I cut it. I mean, I would have measured I said I didn't start with a scale. I started with a basic scale of 124. It's just not 100%. Everything isn't 100% that scale. So I figured out a basic size of a coffee cup. Cut the glue sticks. If you heat the knife up a little bit, it cuts really nicely. So usually the hot glue gun is sitting there. I just put the knife on the tip of the hot glue gun, warm it up, cut it into sections. I had white wire, but it wouldn't matter because you're going to paint it anyway. Found a paintbrush that was the right diameter, that made the right kind of a shape. So wrap the wire so that everything is consistent. Wrap the wire. Maybe I even used the glue stick. Wrap the wire around it, cut it. Again, hold it with a pair of pliers on the hot glue gun, and it'll stick right in. And of course, when it cools, it's stuck there. So instant coffee cup. If it were any bigger, if it were sitting on a counter, it would probably look weird to have a solid top. But because they're hanging on the ceiling and you don't really see in them, I got away with painting the whole cup white first, and then I think I used a marker, and I just did a circle on the inside that was either dark gray or maybe even black, I can't remember, so that you have the effect of it being hollow when it isn't really hollow. And then all of the printing, all of the, the labels, I just Googled every one of them and printed it down to size, glue it on, and I used, I think, Mod Podge. Any sealer on the outside just to keep it a little bit shiny, because you want it to look like a ceramic coffee cup. So that's how the coffee cups were made. The counters and the fridges are all made out of foam. The counters themselves, this counter right here, is made out of this blue. It doesn't have to be blue. This is. And it's probably thicker than it needs to be, but it's what I had on hand, and I try to do that a lot. I try to use what I've got sitting there. You can see I've used this one for a pin cushion more than once, but it made a nice countertop, and it allowed me to score in the cement bricks. Also, I also had a measurement of those, so I knew how big they were. And that is just a simple round dowel. Like this. You can get them anywhere. Oops, sorry. No, you can't. Well, I do have one. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's a round dowel, like a skewer that you use when you're cooking dinner. So that is a little footrest, ordinary, probably 24 to 18 gauge wire that you can get anywhere. The fridges are made of, again, the foam board. A lot of stir stick gets put into some of these projects, a lot of stir sticks. So anytime I need wood, I'm going to use stir sticks. If I need a thicker one, I might use a thicker stir stick or a popsicle stick. Tongue depressor. Tongue depressors, they're like what, an inch and a quarter wide? Nothing in there that's wood like that. I think that was no, that might not have been that. That's not tongue depressor, but a lot of the shelves would be tongue depressors just because they're thin enough. You can't use the foam board inside the fridge, for example, because it's going to be too thick. So when you're talking about scale, if I made a shelf for the fridge out of this, it would translate to be about 4 inches thick. So that's going to look silly. So you have to think about what material you're using for what application. So for the shelves for the fridge, I would have used a thin tongue depressor, and I think I've edged it so the bottles don't fall out with this thin piece of wood. And then the front, I can use this for a pointer. The front of the fridge is made out of the same stuff that I was talking about earlier. When you get a poster frame, and you can cut the plastic out for the front of the fridge. And again, this is all printed stuff. Sometimes the printing takes me a little while to find it because their products, well, their products are different than ours. Their beer is different than ours. But you can, I managed to find everything I needed, I think, for what I knew that he had in the bar. I also had to remember that things change. So what's sitting here now, when I took the pictures, isn't going to be the same when I give it to him next year. So you can kind of play around with different things, and I had to remind myself that it doesn't have to be identical to that photo, because that photo isn't going to be the same the next time I go to visit, or even the next day, which I probably did visit, but that's besides the point. The beer bottles. The beer bottles were fun, although I had to make 8 million of them. But the beer bottles, this is a pipette. I don't know if anybody knows what a pipette is, but a pipette is something that you put on the end of a glue bottle or a bottle. It doesn't fit this one, but if it did, and then you would get a thin stream of glue coming out of your pipette. But that's not how I use them. I turn them into beer bottles. So we have, let's see. This one isn't maybe, it's close enough. So what I did was, the bottom is open. I cut the top off for the beer bottle. Okay, I cut the top off about there. And then I tried to be very conscious of making them all exactly the same, especially within a brand, because they would be. So I would figure out on my mat with these little squares where I was going to make that cut. Because they do have to, all Banks beers need to be the same. And if they're not, it's very noticeable and you'd be surprised. So I made sure I made them all the same. I then put a blob of glue down on this mat and stuck the bottle onto it. In hindsight, I did not need to do that because all the bottles are in the fridge. They're not even coming out on the counter. They're either in crates, they're in buckets, they're in the fridge. I spent a ton of time putting a bottom on when I did not need to. That's just hindsight. If I did it again, there'd be no bottoms on any of those bottles. I did put a little daub of glue. My glue gun has a minute tip, like it's really tiny. It's bigger than that, but it's really small. So I was able to use it to make the little caps. That one's not very neat, and that's probably why I didn't use it, because it was kind of a messed up one. And then if you look in, I don't know, Janine, if you can see in, but I would have painted the bottle caps whatever color they were in real life. Okay, so that was how I made the beer bottles, lots of them. And, oh, I should talk about the little buckets, I guess. John always, you buy a bucket of beer when you're at Wendy's. You don't have to, but we seem to. They're just made out of paper, cardstock, I think. So it's heavier than printer paper, heavier than copy paper, but it's just a cardstock.
Like that blue one? That blue bucket?
This blue bucket.
Oh, okay.
And this red bucket. And then I think I used, I have some cording, you know, like jewelry cording, just round. It's not, it was rubber or plastic or something. And I just made it fit around the top and around the base to give it a bit of a rim. And then painted them the appropriate colors. And then again, printed off the labels. I mean, you can hand paint the labels if you wanted, but I think in that case, the printing it off actually looks more realistic. And the ice cubes are little bits of, now glue sticks do come in different colors and whatever. Some of them are white, some of them are very clear. So if you find glue sticks that are super clear and you cut them into little cubes, you get instant ice cubes. You can also often use things that you get in, like medication sometimes comes with, what are they called? Silicone? It's not silicone, silica? Is that what it is? Silica? Anyway, you look inside and there's little, sometimes they're round. Depending on the scale that you're using, they work really well for ice cubes too. Okay, so I did make the beer bottles out of the little pipettes. I also made wine bottles out of the pipettes. So the difference, of course, is that I just cut the bottle longer. And again, that might not be perfectly accurate. I think wine bottles are a bit bigger around than beer bottles. They are. But for this project, I had to do what I had to do. And that was the way to make a good looking wine bottle. This is his little wine selection in here. And I knew which wine he had. And plus I had the reference photos, so I could figure it out. Googled the labels. I had all the labels on, and it's a pretty small scale. I had all the labels on of especially the Jackrabbit wine. And one day I realized I had them all on upside down. So let's remake all of those bottles so that the labels are on the right way. Some of the bottles are purchased. This is an example of one. They're big, but you do get alcohol and liquor in all different sizes of bottles, so I just went with it. It's hard to make really realistic looking bottles. I mean, unless you're a wine or a glass blower, which I'm not. So, or if you have a 3D printer, which I don't. But for me, I had these at home. I had purchased them for another project, and they fit. I mean, I used the smallest of the bunch, and I put them in various places. That wine glass is probably too big. It's another purchased one. It's probably too big, not true to scale, but hey, how can you go wrong with a big glass of wine is what I always say. Cutlery is impossible for me to make. I mean, there are people that do. I can't. I don't have the knowledge or the tools or the equipment. So the cutlery I purchased. Again, probably not quite the right scale, but it did the purpose. And I didn't use a lot of it. I think there's a spoon somewhere over there. Whatever. The beer glass, beer stein also purchased. This little glass, though, and any others that you see, are made, again, these pipettes, they sure came in handy. No, actually, this was not. This was a covering that came on a paintbrush. So if you buy an artist paintbrush and they come with these covers on them so the bristles don't get all spread around, they're nice and clear. They're not always, but if you're lucky, you get a nice clear one. Again, I think I did the same treatment with the bottom. I put it on the glue and then lifted it and then peeled off. But then you just glue it down on the counter, so it's kind of seemed pointless. And I have something called a UV resin, which you have to put in the sunlight in order for it to harden. So I tinted it with whatever, something red, probably red food coloring or red ink, and set it outside and let the UV resin harden in the sun. And while it was hardening, I would have put in a few ice cubes. And the little straws, sometimes I make out of wire. They probably were made out of, I think they were made out of the very end of this. So these pipettes were literally indispensable in this project. Everything has a pipette on it somewhere. The plates, a little pile of plates up in the corner, they are from any kind of cardboard container that you get soup, cream, milk, and you open it up and you have this white thing and you lift up the white thing and that comes out, and that's your plate. Cut that off, bingo, you have a plate. Now, they're not beautiful in a house, they're not dining room plates, but for this purpose they worked perfectly. Let's see, so we have gone over the bottles. This is just a little quick example of the printing. There's a bunch of printing that I've done. This was left over. So this is wine bottles. So if I'm going to do some printing, I don't know exactly how many bottles I'm going to make. I'll just fill a page with graphics, and that's just what happens to be left over. So you've just got to remember to scale it down to the right size. The countertop was made from a piece of wood. And I think I put a skinny skewer on the one side of it to give it that curved look. Glued it on. And then in the photo, I remembered that the bar is this granite marble, dark brown, black. So again, that was made the same as this, where I Googled it till I found the image that I wanted, scaled it down. Sometimes the scaling is a bit tricky with something like that, so I've probably put more than one image on the page. And then when I had them printed and looked at them, I could tell, well, that one's way too big, and that one's right. Put it on, and I believe I used, bring it down either, I believe I used a Mod Podge. They have this product called Triple Thick, and that gives you a really glossy coat, but any glossy finish is gonna do the trick. That's just what I like and what I used. You don't want everything high gloss. Of course, the cement isn't glossy. Now this bar is well loved and well attended, lots of people every day, so everything isn't pristine. And it's, plus it's this is an outdoor, well no, this part is indoor. I guess I should talk a little bit more about the building before we get on to that next part. This wall isn't here. This is a whole other restaurant. This is an outdoor karaoke bar. This is the walkway that we walk up to, we get to the bar. This is our house over here. And then it goes on and on and on forever, but I couldn't do that. I couldn't build the entire structure, so I concentrated just on the bar. Again, where I had to take artistic license and put this wall in where there isn't actually a wall. So the countertop we talked about. What didn't we talk about? Can you peek in there, Janine? In the kitchen sink, I've got dirty dishes. You might not like that, but I do. I've got dirty dishes in the kitchen sink, and when you want to make the appearance of something like a dish towel draping, because these things are so small, if you put a little dish towel in there, it's not going to look draped. It's going to be sitting, and it's going to be like a square. It's static because it doesn't have enough weight. So to counteract that, I will soak the little piece of cloth in glue and water, a little mixture of glue and water, drape it the way I want it, and then when it hardens, it holds its shape. The bar stools are basically dowels for the stems, 2 different sized washers for the base. The foam board became the seat with little tiny circles of this foam board, and I put a little bit of cotton on the top just to round it a tiny bit. The back of the bar stool was made from a piece of metal that I had. I think it was from a tin can. As long as you can bend it easily with your hands, and then this of course is just regular wire. The seat and the back of the stool are covered in a leather, not real leather, but like a pleather or whatever you want to call it. But you have to look for really fine, really thin fabrics, especially when you get down into this size. Any size really, but this is even harder because you just can't manipulate it if it's got any thickness to it. So that was just a really thin piece of leather. And then I think the last thing I wanted to talk, well, the TVs were fun. The TVs are just skinny pieces of plywood or foam board, not even foam board, they're thinner than that. And then I printed out the games that I thought he'd get a kick out of, and then added electrical cords. They don't go anywhere, they're not plugged in, they're just hidden down into wherever they could be plugged in. This fan is a big part of John's place. Of course, it's very hot there. There's always a bottle opener on the counter. There's never a bottle opener on the counter, I should say. We have to fight for the bottle openers. So I had to make that. That's a big joke there. I had to make sure that there was a bottle opener handy, and the tip jar, and your little suggestion, whatever you want to call it, with the little grenade. The fuse box over underneath the wine bar. I'm trying not to forget anything. I guess, yeah, and another point that I should make about artistic license and scale is that in reality, this ceiling also slanted this way. So if you can see on the back wall, and it's bare drywall, so that's why that little bit of writing is on the white part. Where I've got this slant, that is the actual slope of the ceiling, but it didn't look right. Like, it just was not gonna look right sitting on someone's shelf. It was just odd looking. It looks fine in real life, but on this, so I just made the decision to make it straight across, and it would just look a little bit better. The no smoking sign is another one. I guess the other thing I should talk about is the shutters. A little bit about the shutters. They also, in real life, come down and shut the bar up at night because everything's kind of open. Like, it's not, like, this part of the bar is open to the world. So you have to have a way to protect you, whatever. So these come down, and obviously they don't because they're too small. But again, the actual scale would have made it this high, and again would have made it not aesthetically nice to look at. So that was the decision I made. And they are basically made out of a piece of wood, skinny piece of wood, and then just a whole bunch of layers of, not layers, but stir sticks. What do you want to call them? These are really small stir sticks, actually. This is a traditional stir stick. This is a stir stick from Amazon. And I'm sure that it said right in the order that I placed that they were this size. But they actually come in really handy, again, especially when you're working in a small scale. The lights I ordered, and they're just a little battery pack. I don't know if there's another set in the fridge, but they don't seem to be working right now. So the last thing I want to talk about is, and I think I started to mention this a few minutes ago and got sidetracked. This bar is well used and well loved, and it's well attended. Lots of people there every day. So people coming in and out off the beach and from the sand. So you need to age it a little bit so that it looks, realistic. So what I use for aging things, I mean, it depends. Like where I've aged these washers, I literally painted them black first and then took the black paint off, because that's what would have happened in real life. With the bar stools, they would have been metal, paint them yellow. So you've got a dowel, you paint it yellow. Then I took some silver paint, dabbed it on, and then a little bit of black paint probably to make it look like the paint is worn off. For most aging, I use a black or brown or both piece of chalk pastel. So that's the soft kind, not the oil pastels, but it's a chalk pastel. I think you could also use a piece of chalk, and I've also seen people use eye makeup. I don't personally have any eye makeup, so I'm relegated to using chalk, but if you had eye makeup, I think you could use it. So I use chalk pastel. I have a little, palette or piece of plastic, anything. Take your knife, shave it off so you get like a dusting, so it looks like eyeshadow. So really, more people are probably gonna have eyeshadow. Different ways to do it. And then you use a dry brush, so you don't add any water to it. Use a dry brush, and you just dab it in all the places that would age naturally. Like you don't need a whole lot in the middle. That's gonna be more worn. You want it in the corners and the crevices and wherever things naturally would attract some wear and tear. I think that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and put this cover back on. Again, these magnets are great for so many different things. And I just thought down there it needed something to cover it because of just sand and whatnot. So there we go. That's Wendy's Sports Bar.